All right, let's take a look at homelessness in education. It's a presentation created by Jamie Kerr and Scott Davidson. Uh, According to Merriam-Webster, the dictionary, the definition of homelessness is quite simple. It just means having no place to live. But the government, being the government, of course, has a bit more complicated definition. Hard to imagine. According to one department, Health and Human Services, a homeless individual is defined in section blah 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 as an individual who lacks housing without regard to whether the individual is a member of a family, including an individual whose primary residence during the night is a supervised public or private facility, like shelters, that provides temporary living accommodations, an individual who is a resident in transitional housing. So that could be like a halfway house getting out of jail or a rehab facility, perhaps something like that. A homeless person is an individual without permanent housing who may live on the streets, stay in a shelter, mission, single-room occupancy facilities, perhaps like a motel, abandoned building or vehicle, or in any other unstable or non-permanent situation. Even considering the definition there's other departments within the United States government that have different and possibly more stringent definitions of what being homeless is. So even within different federal departments, there's no consensus on what being homeless is. And then when you try to take percentages, national percentages, based on the different definitions, you get different reports. You're looking at different things. So the percentages are a little bit more difficult to interpret because of that. It depends on what department you're getting your information from and how they're viewing it. But these will give us a basic guide to understand what homelessness is like in America. So national average is 0.1%, which is very low, which is good, but obviously we'd prefer to keep it at 0%, and that's not the case. It's at 0.1%. Of families, 0.06% are homeless nationally. So just about half of the homeless population in the United States is comprised of families. And in California, however, California houses 20% of the nation's homeless. So 20% of all that 0.1% of all those hundreds of thousands of people, I think it was around 576,000 or something like that. 20% of them live within California. And of families, 11% of the nation's homeless are in California. So those national averages, we seem to follow the same proportion. Just over half of all of our homeless are comprised of families, but we have an inordinate share of the homeless within our state. But here's the real kicker. When you get rid of the really stringent and specialized definitions of homelessness and just look at an unstable situation that a kid doesn't have a consistent place to live, 4% of all students in California do not have a consistent place to live, which is kind of amazing. That's 4%. I think that comes out to about 1 in 30 students, which means, obviously there's going to be certain areas within the state that have a higher concentration, and that brings up the average. But it means that essentially 1 in 30 students, 1 in 29 students, is homeless. That's saying 1 in every class is homeless. Now, we may not see that in the districts we work in, but that's a huge percentage of kids that we're having to contend with. And more than half of them are in pre-K through 5th grade. So more than half of that 4% are within the lower grades, pre-K through 5th, which is kind of crazy to be going through that influential developmental time without that stability at home. So the classroom environment, how does this impact the classroom environment? Well, students may not have the typical supplies. They may not be able to afford them. They may not be able to keep them safe at home because they don't have a consistent place that is home. Things like that. So they may not be able to bring their own paper and pencils and rulers and highlighters and markers and crayons and scissors and glue, all those things they may not be able to provide for themselves. Time, energy, and resources for homework may be limited, whether it's taking extensive travel to get to the shelter or wherever it is they may be staying. They may not be able to get good night's sleep wherever they are staying. And the resources to look up answers, check the internet, those may be extremely limited as well. And they may not be able to complete their homework in the same way that other students might. They might have frequent absences for various reasons, traveling around, just not having transportation to get to school, being in different cities perhaps, and frequently moving to new schools. They may move around a little bit more because they don't have a consistent place to live. If they're kind of couch surfing, their families are going from friends to friends and family to family, living in living rooms and things, on couches. They may not be able to stay all in one place for very long. Academic instruction. Do not mistake missing assignments for lack of competency. These kids can be very smart. They just, one, maybe behind grade level because they can't ever finish a school year in one place. Or two, they may not be able to do assignments. They may be very smart and very capable mentally, cognitively, but they just don't have the ability to do the work outside of the classroom. Tailor assignments to build on individual skills. So if you know that a student is behind the rest of the class, figure out how you can rework the assignments that you do give so that this student can practice the skills that they are at, the level that they're at, and be able to progress at the normal pace without having to try to skip steps and jump ahead to where the rest of the class is able to perform at. And then content can either be a distraction or be distracted from. Meaning, in this kind of an awkward sense, classwork can either be an escape for the kids to get away from the turmoil and the instability that they have at home, and the stability of routines and schedules and being set, having one set classroom with the same people and the same teacher. That could be an amazing distraction from their difficult home life that they thrive in. They love that structure, and so they really devote themselves to learning. Or they have a lot of big stuff going on at home that is on their mind. They're worried about family members. They're worried about mom and dad's job. They're worried about where they're going to get food from. They have these heavy cares on their shoulders and on their minds that, you know what, is probably a little bit more important than figuring out how a tadpole develops. And so they might be distracted from the content because of these cares, and recognizing that that's why, not because they're lazy or they're rude, because they have some serious issues they're dealing with. Social behavior. Hygiene may impact peer interactions. Not that homeless people are gross, but they just may not have the same access to laundry facilities and to showers that we take for granted every day at our own homes. Shame may prevent them from fully opening up to peers. They don't want to share what's going on with them, and they may not have consistent base for social interaction skills. They have hopped around enough from place to place frequently that they don't have the ability to really interact in a normal way with their peers because they haven't seen that. They don't know what that's like. And they may not have longtime friends because they're moving around. They may not have people that they've known for years and years and years that they have these relationships they can fall back on because all those old friends are in different places now. Finally, some strategies that we can use as educators to help these students make a personal connection. That's first and foremost. They're people. They need personal connection. They can feel kind of isolated because they're different. They have a different home situation than everybody else. And they just need to be seen as people and have that connection with a teacher and with their classmates. have extra resources available and make it available to everybody so that it's not just, oh, here, this one student is the one that needs these resources. They can have them and only they can have them. Make them available to everybody so that they don't feel embarrassed about needing to borrow pencils or paper or whatever it may be. Provide class time to work on homework or projects. If you know that they're not going to get done outside of school because of the situation, let them work in class and find ways to provide that time so that they can be working on the content, working on the skills, and not just abandoning it the second they walk out the classroom. Adapt assignments based on abilities. We kind of talked about that already. Figure out where they are and where they need to be, and whatever assignment you're giving, figure out how you can fine-tune it to them individually and adapt it to them. And be aware of resources. There are so many just places that provide resources to homeless families that we can help them be aware of. There's so many Title I regulations and funding that both kind of mandate how we treat homeless students and families, and also provide resources to serve those families and those students. And within your own school, there's so many resources available, different personnel, different programs that you can utilize. And making yourself aware of them so that you can help provide them to the students is really going to help them out. So be aware, do the research. You know, that's kind of my job here in this assignment, but there's so much out there. I could spend another, what am I at, 11 minutes and 45 seconds? I could spend another probably 15 minutes easy just going through the resources that are out there. So know that there are a lot. All right, and references, I'll just leave this up for a little bit. A few websites that I was able to get this information from. So you can pause it and check that out if you want to. But otherwise, I am done. Hope you guys learned something here.